Hi, I'm Zoe, and today I want to talk about two things that I'm really passionate about: mental health and reading books. A couple of months ago, I was diagnosed as type 2 bipolar, which is actually really amazing for me. I have the right medications now. I know how to build routines and techniques to help cope with any potential hypomanias, the fallout of depression, and I learned a lot more about how my brain works. And one of the really important things that I found out is that memory loss around hypomanias and depression is really common with people who are bipolar. Now, for a long time, I'd known that when I got really anxious or really depressed, time just got kind of smudgy, and it was like someone had kind of rubbed their hand over the lens that I have for my memories. Once I was on medication and started to get more stable, I was able to really jump back into stories and books, and oh, that's been amazing. But then I started thinking, is there something that I'm missing? Did I read something and forget about it, or did I stop reading something that I was enjoying just because of how my brain works? And then I realized the answer is yes. So I made a list for myself of the books that I have either stopped reading or that I completely forgot that I read, and I want to finish them this year or go back and reread them. The first book that I want to reread is Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. My copy of this is actually coming later this week when I'm recording this, and I'm super excited. I cannot tell you exactly what happens in this book. I remember that there is a girl with magic that is visible on her skin as these like dark shadows that accumulate, and I believe that if she touches someone, she can make them feel pain, but she feels that pain constantly. When I first read this book, I remember raving about the representation of chronic pain and how I thought it was one of the best representations I have seen, especially in YA literature. It's actually the only representation of chronic pain specifically that I've seen in YA literature. As someone who has lived with chronic pain for about 10 years now, that's really important to me. The second book is Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Mistborn trilogy, and I remember reading it. I remember the beginning of it, and then nothing. I know that it follows directly on the ending of Mistborn, and I know the main players in the story. That's about it. Next, I have my list of books that I just stopped reading in the middle or partway through. When I looked at this list, I realized that a lot of these books have some commonalities. They are usually changing perspective between at least two characters, and they are in one way or another pretty detail-oriented. One of them has really interesting language, and I love it so much, but I couldn't focus long enough to really process the changes in language and follow the main theme. So without further ado, the first book that I want to probably start over and finish reading is The Help. The Help has been recommended to me by a lot of people, and it was used as an example of a specific type of story structure in Save the Cat Writes a Novel, which is a book I really like as a writer. It's also a book that is historical fiction, which honestly is not something that I read a whole lot of, and this year I want to broaden my horizons in terms of genre. The second book on this list is Pontypool Changes Everything by Tony Burgess. This book, if you are a language nerd and you love stories that tell their own story through the use of language, I highly recommend this. I could not focus long enough to read this book, and I am probably going to have to read this when it is the only book that I am reading. This book gave rise to a stage play by the same name and a movie by the same name that is my favorite zombie movie ever. Essentially, zombieism, or zombification, or whatever you want to call it, is passed through language. And that makes the language in this book really interesting, and seeing how it breaks down and changes and mutates and is transferred is so fascinating, and I cannot wait to finish this book. The next two books I actually went back and have already finished. The first one is Negotiating with the Dead by Margaret Atwood. This book is kind of a series of essays by Margaret Atwood. It's kind of a philosophical discussion of the writer and their place in society, and I found out that she's a poet. Who knew? It is very stream of consciousness, which made it really difficult to follow before, and honestly it made it difficult to follow when I was reading it and very tired. But it is worth the read, and I did go back and finish this one. Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. Now, like I said, I've already gone back and finished this one, but I had actually started it 2 other times before, which honestly on the third read kind of made the beginning drag for me. But the first 2 times around it didn't. And it's not like I remembered it anyway. This story follows 3 characters who live in a land where magic has disappeared, and they're on a quest to restore it. And one of them is on a quest to stop them from restoring it. And it just punches you in the gut at the end, and it's so good, and I'm so happy I got to read this book and experience it all the way through. So those are the books that I totally forgot existed in my reading lexicon, and honestly, some of them I only know that I read or was in the process of reading because they were on my Goodreads. That's it for this video. I don't know if there are more books that I'm going to realize that I have forgotten in the future, but if they are, I'm really looking forward to experiencing them again. Sometimes it is because I've listened to an audiobook and I found that I just absorb that information differently, especially if I was listening to it when I was depressed or when I was manic. So I kind of am looking forward to finding out if there's anything that I get to experience for the first time again, which is kind of cool. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any books that you're gonna do a reread on because you just forgot the story or you just want to experience it again, let me know down in the comments. I love hearing people's recommendations, especially if it's something that you enjoy rereading. That says a lot to me.
Editing Zoe here because I forgot to record an outro. Are you seeing a theme here? Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you down in the comments. Bye.